Sushi, an international food. My name is Luke Simpson, and this is a project about how sushi began, how it spread, and the California roll. Was it in Vancouver, British Columbia, or Los Angeles, California? Sushi spread from an isolated island nation to California in 1906. By 1986, it was a worldwide phenomenon. Japanese cuisine is now the third most popular food globally, according to YouGov, and in the US, it was rated positively by 74% of those polled. The story of how this happened deserves to be told. Sushi began in ancient times, and no one knows exactly when or where. But we do know that the first food to be called something like sushi was in China around the 300s BC. It was called both ji and ja, which eventually became synonyms, meaning fermented fish with salt and rice. But the Chinese did not invent the food. They were just the first people to record it. It was most likely spread to China through Southeast Asian indigenous peoples, which were assimilated into the Han population over time. Sushi in Japan was first recorded in the classical Heian period, in the 900s, although it likely spread across the sea much earlier. The name for sushi, which we still use today, likely comes from the Japanese word sui, translating to sour. And sushi was made from everything. The early history of sushi is simply the history of food preservation. Rather than strict recipes, sushi was made of whatever fresh ingredients people had available. People groups living far from the coastlines hardly ever use ocean fish, making vegetarian sushi, fishing from small streams near villages, as well as using game animals and even fowl. From bears to birds, yes, sometimes bears, there really is no such thing as inauthentic sushi, although there certainly is a dominant style, which has been reproduced across the world. This is known as erome sushi. It roughly translates to Tokyo style. This progression reminds me of the spread of the Mission burrito. Originating in San Francisco, the food escaped into America at large, becoming the default burrito in these parts, and even evolving into new foods in other markets. Like how San Diego, in my opinion, made a drastic improvement on the mold, the California burrito. Erome sushi, like the Mission burrito, is what almost all the popular varieties of cuisine in the US are based on. But erome is not the only kind, just the most popular. For sushi to make the jump from food preservation technique to international cuisine, the transition from slow fermentation to vinegar flavoring would have to happen. Another factor which helped sushi recipes travel was the print revolution. At the turn of the 17th century, an explosion of sushi occurred across Japan. Books were written advising customers on what to look for in their commercial sushi experiences. And in the early 1900s, as the Japanese colonized Korea, the phenomenon spread there as well. Sushi remained contained to East Asia until Japanese immigration to the West Coast reached ethnic enclave-forming levels, notably in Little Tokyo, Los Angeles, pictured here in 1906. The impetus for Japanese migration was the exclusion of Chinese people from the United States. Skip ahead 24 years, and the influx in Japanese laborers led to the first sushi being sold across the Pacific. But the Japanese-American relationship was growing weak. In 1907, then-President Theodore Roosevelt made an agreement with Japan. This involved halting all Japanese men from immigrating. And 17 years later, immigration quotas were reinstated due to a climate of nativism, with some exceptions, notably the Philippines. East Asian migrants had been formally excluded from entering the US until 1965. Yet, in the face of xenophobia, the International Sushi Restaurant was born. A restaurant which first opened in 1921 in Little Tokyo eventually became the first to serve sushi to all kinds of customers. It changed location many times. During World War II, the restaurant was formally put in the name of an American-born child in order to get around the laws barring first-generation Japanese immigrants, or Issei, from land ownership. Despite all the hardship, this restaurant survived, becoming the first to have a sushi viewing window open to the street, a trend which started with the shop's owner Kawasaki Yasuhiro. And of course, Pearl Harbor shook things up a little bit. The strained relationship was now extreme. Japanese attacks loomed in the imaginations of Californians, while those of Japanese descent in the state, including US citizens, were locked up in internment camps. It goes without saying that the spread of sushi halted while the Axis and Allies fought. But in the post-war era, the dish flourished. This is not only an interesting food story, but it is symbolic of the post-war relationship Japan has had to the United States. Before getting into the resurgence, it's important to look at just how strained this relationship became. 1916. The Fresno Herald provides evidence of a growing market for Japanese cuisine in parts of California outside the major cities. Its fascination comes from a place of othering Japan, and framing the Japanese lifestyle as exotic and desirable. Despite its Orientalist lens, I do not think it's anti-Japanese. It functioned to incorporate Japanese practices into American culture, bridging a gap between different folks living in the same region. In contrast, the LA Times, towards the end of the war in 1944, published many stories which paint the Japanese as a monolithic enemy. While the USA was at war with the nation of Japan, it should have had no problems with the Japanese people, especially those living within the United States. But articles like this, along with other cultural fixtures of the time, like the radio, fed into wartime sensationalism, and lumped the Japanese diaspora into one enemy figure through ethnic slurs. The use of these slurs, oftentimes casually, led to the dehumanization of the Japanese long after the war's end. Japanese Americans were in a period of rebuilding after the war. Little Tokyo was revived as a Japanese community after it was almost planned to be a Latino center, and during the war years, it became just about entirely African American, known as Bronzeville. These people were largely relocated to freshly empty wartime housing units in Watts once wartime jobs dried up. As the Japanese survivors repopulated, they had created the perfect environment for the 1965 lift on the ban of Asian immigrants, and by no coincidence, so began the sushi boom in the United States. In the 70s, it began to escape Little Tokyo. It was still largely for Japanese audiences, catering to the new generation of homesick businessmen craving fast food. But adventurous young folk, part of the counterculture movement, started to try the cuisine as well. The McGovern Report on Health in 1977 detailed for the first time what was healthy and what was not to America. Those health-conscious few in the 70s took note that the novel sushi ticked all their boxes. Eventually, the newsworthiness of Japanese food, and now finally sushi, had returned to its pre-war levels. The cool factor of sushi was becoming more well-known, and its exotic connotations led it to replace the previous generation's French food as a meal for the young metropolitan professional. The portion sizes offered an advantage. Instead of sitting down for hours to dine, sushi in big cities could be picked up and eaten quickly while remaining a classy and, importantly, exclusionary food. This lined up nicely with 80s business culture. Sushi launched from LA and NYC, landing in Paris and London. From there, the unstoppably trendy sushi wave continued across Europe and the Commonwealth nations. In some places, notably Eastern Europe, the sushi boom started late and ended only in the 2010s. Ukraine is the second largest sushi market outside of Japan. Now, describing the spread of Japanese culture across America and the world as the sushi boom is a narrow way of viewing the phenomenon. It's also known as the Japanese tech boom, or maybe the Japanese everything boom. Japan was going through an unprecedented period of growth, and at the same time as sushi exploded onto the scene, so did other Japanese products such as electronics, toys, and cars. Sushi may not have become as popular as it did if businessmen never came to sell America on Toshibas, Hondas, and Nintendos. Now, who invented the famous California roll? The important part about the story of the California roll is that it was made out of necessity. Because Americans, which is the term Vancouver sushi chef Tojo used to describe Canadians and Americans together, were afraid of raw fish due to the way it was presented to them. In grocery stores with stinky fish aisles, which he says were nothing like the fresh and fragrant fish markets of his hometown Osaka. The other important point is that these inauthentic forms of sushi grew so popular in America and abroad that they've actually made their way back to Japan. Japanese diners today at some specific sushi spots can expect to find American-themed rolls in their menu, most popularly the California roll. Alas, it seems the mythologized origin of the food may be just that, a myth. Some theorize that Tojo made the same roll by coincidence a few years after it was invented in LA and sought to cement himself as the inventor, which he seems to believe. Another is that in order to promote his restaurant, which is credited with starting the sushi boom in Vancouver, a city now renowned for their cuisine, he simply adopted the California roll as his own, perhaps without knowing exactly who invented it. In the 1970s, it was a lot harder to fact-check these kinds of rumors, and they spread through word of mouth fast. In the end, Angelinos couldn't care less, and Vancouverites are bitter to learn the hard truth. So, the California roll was invented at the very beginning of the sushi boom. Tojo may have been the first to put the rice on the outside of the roll, but the ingredients which comprise the California roll were first assembled in Little Tokyo, the heart of Japanese immigration in America. The idea at the heart of this presentation is, sushi is an international food. It adapts wherever it goes, exemplified by the vast variety of sushi within Japan, as well as the way it adapts to culture abroad, modifying ingredients to cater to specific palates and preconceptions in the United States. In Korea, it was impressed upon the people, and in the US, it would have been stamped out if not for a determined few, ready to adapt to the rules to keep their cuisine alive. In Hong Kong and Ukraine, sushi was adopted as a delicious protest, an alternative cuisine in the faces of the foreign governments which seek to impress upon them their idea of how things should be. Sushi is not only an international food, it is and has always been the unstoppable food. Thank you.